Hello, and welcome back to our interview with the speaker series for the United Astrology Conference 2026. I'm Melissa, and today we are joined by astrologer Adam Elenbaas. Adam, would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Adam. And yeah, I'm really excited to be at UAC. I was like a lunch speaker in 2018. And so coming back now with some more conferences and lots more years of experience, and really excited for the opportunity to be a speaker on I guess, the main schedule this time. All the speakers are good, really, on all of the levels of UAC. There's an embarrassment of riches at UAC, honestly. So yeah, I really enjoyed it last time. I enjoyed learning. I enjoyed getting to meet students and friends and seeing colleagues. And it's really special, I think, for astrologers to have time to learn together, but also time to spend together. You
Mhm.
know, the thing that happens to me as a content creator, a teacher, a consulting astrologer is that I get really wrapped up in, my craft, just like I imagine musicians do. And then when you get together with a bunch of other musicians or astrologers in our case, and you jam together, talking at dinner every night, listening to other people's talks, my appreciation for the field and for the topic and all of it just expands, and I get out of my own little vacuum, which is like inevitable because we're all individual practitioners, but it's just so nice. And I'm so looking forward to being there again. And I really feel that way about a bunch of conferences, but UAC is special because it's really sort of like the Olympics. Like
Yes,
all of the countries come, everyone's
that
there.
is not the first time that comparison has been made as well. It is
Okay.
because of
Yeah.
just international. Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you were a lunch lecturer last time. It, for people just chiming in, just joining in, that was at this point 7, possibly 8 years ago. This was in 2018. So, can you talk a little bit then about your journey up to that point
Yeah.
through astrology?
Yeah, well, I began full-time professional astrology in 2010. So I'd already been like pretty, a veteran, 8 years in. Like I think
Mhm.
that's considered a veteran at that point. In terms of seeing a lot of clients' charts, teaching a bunch of classes. I'd been to other conferences and taught, but it was the first UAC where I was sort of like eligible, and I missed the application deadline. I wasn't really
Oh
in the
no.
yeah. So, but anyways, I ended up getting invited as a lunch speaker because someone was like, "Hey, why aren't you at there?" And I was like, "Oh, well, thank you. I didn't even really know about it." And I suffer from not being in the loop enough when it comes to big events happening in the world of astrology. Like I am something of a monk. Like I attribute it to like my Capricorn ninth house moon. Like I get into my little spaces of practice, and I'm a bit of an introvert too, so I wasn't aware of it the first time anyway. I became aware of it and then ended up getting an opportunity to give a lunch lecture, which was awesome. Met a bunch of students. The lunch lectures, by the way, were packed. Like my room was like people like flowing out of it into the hallway. It was just awesome. So it was super fun. I had learned a lot. It was definitely next level at UAC though in terms of the scope. It was just like, whoa, this is like I'd spoken at NORWAC already a few times by that point, maybe ESAR and CGR, stuff like that. But UAC was like, holy cow, this is a much bigger arena of astrologers and attendees and everything. So, and Chicago was a great setting for it. I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited it's back because I think it's a really beautiful city and a really hospitable like space for astrologers to come together. So yeah, it was a fun talk then. I remember going out to dinner um, and literally sitting at a table with like 20 astrologers that I had only ever talked to online.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they became my friends for the first time because of that. And now they're most of them I still communicate with, it's like 20 people or whatever. But it was really cool. And I think a lot of people have that experience where everything that's online at these conferences suddenly becomes real. And it really, for a lot of people, marks a turning point in their experience with astrology to make real connections.
Yeah, absolutely. That is kind of like a recurring theme through some of these conversations is you really can't beat the amount of community that's about to happen at this conference. But I want to jump back to you said that you started practicing professionally in 2010, and you're not an old guy. So, can you tell me like when did you get into astrology then? Like what was the path here?
Yeah, so let's see, so I'm 44, and this is my 16th year in full-time astrology going on. And I started in 2010. So I was 29. It was my Saturn return.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Um, I started studying in a class, kind of like more or less formally studying, because it had been an interest for me for several years. But then I took a class with Rebecca Gordon in New York City in, I think it was 2009 or 10. But anyway, that was part of a gradual opening of it was like admitting to myself that I love this more than anything else.
Yeah.
Because there was a part of me that just didn't think it was very practical.
Hmm.
Uh, you can't make a living doing, that kind of thing. But it came into my life through, so in my I grew up a preacher's kid, and my dad and family had a kind of like a everything in our family fell apart. My dad had kind of like a very severe mental and spiritual health collapse in his midlife, sort of like his Uranus return or Uranus opposition. And um, I felt sort of adrift and like, yeah, like I felt adrift spiritually and intellectually in my early 20s, and I developed an opiate addiction. And then in seeking some way back to sanity and health, I had a sort of accidental encounter with psychedelics. And
Okay.
like many people, the psychedelic experience, far from getting high and partying, was very meaningful. It was really the first part of a journey back to health and sanity. And then the rest of my 20, within a year after that first experience, I was gradually getting sober and made my way down to South America. This is 2004, if I'm remembering correctly. So well before the rush to drink ayahuasca. I
Yeah.
was in South America drinking ayahuasca, and was really a very early part of some of the earlier people who came back and ended up writing quite a bit about it. And the rest of my 20s, I worked with ayahuasca for about 10 years into my early 30s, and wrote a book about it that was published by Penguin. And I worked for Reality Sandwich, which at the time was this big web magazine devoted to things like consciousness, psychedelics, etc. Um, and those experiences opened me up. It kind of took my faith that I had grown up with and just sort of universalized it and said, look,
Hmm.
the divine appears in all these different languages and cultures and people and art and so many different things that just kind of opened up for me outside of the scope of my Christian faith. And through those experiences, yoga came in, and interest in Eastern philosophy. And so, like many people have had this experience. I'm not the first person at all. I even think of like the Beatles having this kind,
Yeah.
it's like everyone's had this experience. But for me, astrology came in because I was in graduate school for creative writing, and I was studying literary theory. And what was really interesting to me is that there was a pretty rich amount of material on archetypes in graduate school for creative writing. And the language of psychedelics is highly symbolic. Many people have observed this. And so when I started studying astrology, I was like, oh, this is like a language that can speak to some of the logic of these highly symbolic mandalas that are a frequent part of psychedelic experiences. Then I discovered, oh, I'm not alone in that either. There's Richard Tarnas and Stanislav Grof who've done all this work with LSD and astrology. And so there's this whole like world from psychedelics and psychedelic medicine and healing experiences to astrology opened up, and it just became something I absolutely fell in love with.
Nice, nice. That is I will say that's probably the first time that in the interviews somebody's brought up the use of psychedelics and bringing them. But I don't doubt you're the only like I there's definitely people who I
No.
think yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um
Yeah.
but I love that like how actually separated it was from this like the beginnings here. So you really only studied it for maybe a couple of years before you went professional.
Yeah, so I was finished. I did a master's degree in English and then an MFA in creative writing in my 20s while working with ayahuasca. And during graduate school for like 4 years, I just started reading and dabbling,
Yeah.
just like a dabbler. And
Yeah.
then as I got into my late 20s, it was like became starting to become like an obsession. And then I took my first like training program
Mhm.
around my Saturn return. And at the end of that training program, what was really interesting was that I had left my job as a social worker in New York City to manage a yoga studio. The yoga studio, I was handed, as the manager of the yoga studio, was handed the eviction notice, like my first week on the job. I was like, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. So then I'm collecting unemployment and I'm finishing this training program with Rebecca Gordon and I'm about to go on a national book tour that Penguin was sending me on for a book about ayahuasca. So it's a very like
Yeah.
strange time. Like one level, my dream is coming true. I'm a published author. On the other level, like I've just lost my day job. Like so everything was pretty upside down. Rebecca encouraged me, well, why don't you just, you're unemployed. Why don't you just try a career in
Yeah.
astrology? You might as well. And it so happened that the week that I was finishing that training program, eclipses that I was born under. So I was born under a lunar eclipse in my ninth house. And that same lunar eclipse was recurring just days after I finished the training program in
Okay.
my ninth house, same one I was born under. So that eclipse, I got really, really sick, super, super sick. And then during the process of getting sick, I became feverish, like it was like a fever vision.
Yeah.
I became very clear during that period of sickness that she was right. I might as well give it a try. So I did, and it's been what I've been doing ever since.
Nice, nice. And I feel like maybe it's always been a thing, but more and more online I'm seeing people like either too scared to step forward and start charging and doing it for a career or for like, money, or people jumping in without any kind of guidance.
Yeah,
And so I love that like Rebecca was so actively supportive of
yeah,
you stepping forward and making that choice.
yeah. I think it wouldn't feel all my students over the years, whenever they get to that point, I'm like, it wouldn't be right if you didn't have some real trepidation. Because there's got to be some humility in your heart to think,
Hmm.
who am I to do this? And I think that's healthy. But also it can't be so extreme that you hold yourself back from the only process that will actually qualify you, which is getting experience. You
Yeah,
have to just
yeah.
go get the experience. Honestly, I'd rather see students taking the risk to do consultation work as they're creating content
Hmm.
than just create content, which is good. There's a whole need for content and it's really cool. And I like it how creative it is. But like, I think content increases in its quality when people are getting experience reading charts for people.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Like that's the reason we call it a practice and not
Yeah.
just, a study. And I do like the confidence with which you were like, I am a content creator, because I think it gets kind of a bad rep, but that is what a lot of us are doing on the side of, being an active astrologer, or, whatever our day job might be. That's just unfortunately or fortunately the world that we live in now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. We have
um,
to build bridges, right? Like
yeah.
the content world and maybe a deeper world of study or a deeper world of consultation or something. If we can build meaningful bridges between these spaces, there's no reason there can't be like a slightly more entertaining space over here, but it
Yeah.
bridges to more serious spaces and practitioners are aware of and trying to meaningfully craft those places together.
Hmm. There's just as many ways to be an astrologer as there is to be an astrologer creating content. So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. All
Amen.
right. All right. So we've got, a few months, give or take, until UAC. So can you tell me some of the things that you're looking forward to this year?
Yeah, well, I think probably most excited to see people that I love, see people that I know, see people that I haven't gotten to meet yet. Like a lot of my students take the programs online. And so getting to meet like lots of students for the first time. And like it's weird because I'm like as I'm sitting here, I'm like in front of a screen and I produce a lot of content and classes and stuff in front of a screen and I never get to see the people on the other end. or I only see a few of them on the cameras in classes or whatever. So when I actually meet someone and someone says, "Hey, your work has really made a difference in my life," or "It helped me make a tough choice in this area or that area," when that feedback, I know I'm not alone in this. Other astrologers say this, I think, about UAC as well. When you get to meet people and you hear that feedback, it's like getting to draw from a real well, you know. Wow, this is really nourishing, and it's a chance for me to fill my own cup as much as it is a chance to, give something to others through a talk I'm doing or whatever.
Yeah. You can't beat that face-to-face response about your work in general, like any work, but your work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you for joining us today. Is there
Yeah.
anywhere that people can find out more about you and the work you do?
Yeah, sure. It's nightlightastrology.com. It's like you can see it on the TV back there. Nightlightastrology.com is the website. Nightlight Astrology is Instagram, and Nightlight Astrology is my YouTube where I create content weekly.
Awesome. Awesome. I will plug all of that down below. And if viewers are looking for more information on UAC and everything we have planned for the conference, then head to uacastrology.com. But otherwise, thank you for joining us today and have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. You can find new episodes on our channel every Monday and Wednesday, continuing through to the United Astrology Conference in 2026. We also invite you to attend UAC 2026, taking place in Chicago, Illinois from September 3rd to the 9th. As the largest astrological conference in the world, UAC offers an unparalleled opportunity to deepen your astrological studies and connect with a global community. With over 270 lectures, more than 180 esteemed speakers, and 1,500 attendees, this gathering is a cornerstone event for both seasoned professionals and dedicated students of astrology. For details on registration, scholarships, volunteer opportunities, or advertising, please visit uacastrology.com or refer to the links in the description box below.